Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome to a brand new Snapshot video. This is Minecraft Snapshot 20w05b, and the B here is kind of important. You might have seen people making videos about 20w05a, which is where a lot of these features were introduced, but today Minecraft has released a B snapshot to take care of some issues with that. I ran into one when I was experimenting a little bit with this snapshot on a live stream, and the game kept freezing so that when I was trying to bone meal stuff or make grass paths or do a variety of things, the game would just not save any of the changes to the world, and for whatever reason, if you logged out, it wouldn't have saved all of your progress. So it was a little bit weird. Now we are working with a slightly more stable version of this snapshot with all of the brand new features that have been added this time around. And this time, we're going to take a look at some really cool blocks that are coming to Lush Cave environments. Now, Lush Caves will not generate anywhere in the world yet. If we go down into spectator mode and take a look around, we're right by an ocean, so that's probably a bad example, but around here, you won't notice any Lush Cave environments in any of these caves reaching out into the distance, and that is because cave generation is still being worked on. From what we understand, cave generation is going to completely transform the way the underground works, and then the cave biomes that we've been shown at Minecraft Live are basically going to be overlaid on top of that new generation. So Lush Caves themselves aren't necessarily like a set piece, they are just one part of the puzzle. But now we're here in this cave, we need to shed a little bit of light on it, so I'm going to dig into our first feature, Glowberries. Glowberries are, as the name suggests, glowing light sources that we can find in caves attached to cave vines. I'm going to grab some bone meal out of the creative inventory, and you'll see that this lights up some glowberries on these vines. You can actually spread the vines downwards with the glowberries you've collected, but then to get more glowberries to appear on the vine, you have to bone meal it, and that will produce glowberries at the point at which you bone meal. Naturally, then those can be collected by right-clicking on them in the same way that you collect sweet berries, and they can be planted elsewhere to be grown or bone mealed once again. But you cannot grow them with bone meal, which is kind of an interesting facet of these. You can kind of just spam them with bone meal to get lots of glowberries the way you do with sweet berries, and of course they will grow naturally. Now you're looking at a growth from the ceiling downwards, of course, but like kelp, they actually have an age. If you look at the topmost or the bottommost block, the tip of the vines creeping downwards, you'll notice on the right hand side there is cave vines head is the block we're looking at, and there's actually an age there. You'll notice those ones over there just sprouted some berries and immediately lit up that area. That was pretty cool to see. But once again, these have an age, and I expect up to a certain point they will grow downwards and then stop, which is going to give them a little bit more dynamic range in caves. They're going to grow to a certain length and then stop. Although obviously, as a player, when you completely change that by adding a glowberry to the bottom, it's going to completely change the age of the lowest block. You'll notice there we went from 11 to 15. You break it again, it turns into 8, and now that's 14, and we can break that several times to come up with completely different ages for the end of the plant. That's going to lead to some interesting farming techniques being implemented for these, probably along the lines of kelp, but also the fact that the glowberries basically hang out wherever. They sort of generate halfway up the plant. Is going to be an interesting way of dealing with these. You can bone meal them with a dispenser though, so if we stack up a bunch of dispensers here filled with bone meal, we could actually get some sweet berries to generate from basically every part of the plant here, like so, and that could be a really interesting way of farming glowberries. I'm sure there will be a lot of different fun ways that people test out for farming glowberries in the next few days. But one interesting thing I want to highlight before we move on from glowberries and cave vines is the fact that each of these different blocks is treated slightly differently when it comes to the glowberry light source. Or rather, the main body of the plant is going to have a different light level when you add glowberries to it by bone mealing than the tip of the plant is. So if we take a look at the block light here right now, I'm standing on the block alongside it, we bone meal that, we get 12 block lights. So in the center of that we have 13 block light being given off by this cluster of glowberries here on the plant. And I'm going to remove the ones at the top of this plant so we get a little bit more of an easy look at it. There we go, yes, 13. And we remove that, we're back to 4. Now, if I bone meal the end of the plant, we only get a block light emitted of 10. So we're actually seeing slightly less block light from down here, as though you've got a cluster of 3 sea pickles together instead of 4, or 3 candles together instead of 4. There is a little bit of variation in how much light they produce, and at ground level, it means they're potentially not going to block mob spawns at such a wide range if only the tip ends up with a small cluster of glowberries instead of a larger cluster like we have over here. So interesting, kind of adds a little bit of dynamic variety to the light levels we're getting from these plants. Of course, glowberries seem like they're easy enough to get. You can have a bit of a rave as well while you get them, and they should be a really nice addition. I really love the way these blocks look as well. The foliage is nice and lush and thick, as the name Lush Caves would suggest. I think they're a really, really cool looking addition to Minecraft. As with sweet berries, you will also find that foxes have taken a liking to glowberries, and they're actually a substitute for foxes' favorite food. If you throw one on the ground, of course, much like other food, foxes will take it in their mouths and then eventually eat it, but you can also breed foxes together with them, as you saw the hearts coming out from this fox there. That also means that feeding a fox glowberries will cause it to trust you, and the fox's offspring, if it is bred with glowberries, will trust you as well. Now I feel like slowly transforming this patch of cave into a lush cave all of our own. I'll probably let the fox loose to roam around wherever he feels like going, although he's just picking up the glowberries right now. I wonder if we can use foxes to farm them as well. That could be an interesting approach to it. But anyway, we're going to start to transform this cave into a lush cave scene as we talk about some of the next features, and that's going to require us to get a little bit of water in the floor, because next up on the changelog at minecraft.net, which I'll have linked in the description, we have dripleaf plants, and dripleaf plants actually need to start by growing in water. At least the smaller ones do. We'll get into the difference between them in a second here, but we want to grow them on either dirt, grass, or clay. They will actually grow on clay inside of these lush caves. So I've replaced the floor of this pool with both dirt and grass. The grass is probably going to revert to dirt anyway, and these plants can also grow on moss, but I didn't want to introduce moss yet. We'll get to that in a second. If I put dripleaf into here, we'll find there is actually small dripleaf and big dripleaf. So small dripleaf actually needs to be planted in water, while big dripleaf can be placed basically anywhere in the world. But once again, as I said, these have to be placed in water and on top of either dirt or clay. You can't grow them on the grass outside of here, but they can grow on the grass in the water, and likewise, if I try and plant one on clay, you'll notice it can actually be planted on clay outside of the water. So clay is definitely going to be the best block to bring with you if you want to grow some dripleaf outside of a watery environment. Speaking of growing dripleaf, these small plants don't really have any kind of collision to them. You can't stand on them or anything like that. To get the big dripleaf, which we have seen in the Lush Cave demonstration, you will just need to bone meal them like so, and then it will create this lily pad-like structure at a sort of randomized height from the surface of the plant originally. You'll notice this one only grew a block tall, whereas this one grew 3 blocks tall, and it'll sort of randomize the heights a little bit here, allowing you to effectively sort of randomize a parkour course. Let's see if we can complete this one. I think I should be able to get up there. We can't quite get onto that last bit of dripleaf there, but you'll notice that these now have a large lily pad type structure on top here, which allows them to hold a player for a second or two. As the player stands on there, the dripleaf pad will basically wilt downwards, and if you don't jump off it fast enough, you'll find yourself falling through the plant. You can bone meal these to get them to different heights as well, so if we wanted to increase the height of that last one, just a single piece of bone meal should do it, and unfortunately the height of the cave is what's stopping me from getting onto that last one. But as you can see, a very simple parkour challenge rose out of this pretty much instantaneously. You can also crouch on dripleaf to prevent it from tilting, so if you want a second or two to rethink your trajectory in these parkour courses, all you have to do is crouch like I'm doing right now, and the dripleaf won't tilt, but as soon as you stand upright, it's going to start to tilt again, so that's a sign that you're not being as careful as you could be. Multiplayer parkour courses are going to be a little bit more dangerous though, because big dripleaf will actually break when hit by a projectile. And if you want to just obtain it in survival mode, I'll go into survival mode really quickly, you can just break it by hand right now, and it remains to be seen whether you will end up with a few more ways of breaking it in future, if you'll need to have shears or silk touch or something like that, but for now, it can just be obtained by hand. A few people were very excited to let me know that dripleaf plants are actually used for an exploit where you can break bedrock by growing them from small dripleaf on a block of clay into big dripleaf, and it didn't happen that time, it doesn't happen all of the time, but there you go, it actually punches a hole right through if the dripleaf plant grows to higher than its original height, and that can get you up onto the nether roof very easily. But as with many methods we've seen for breaking bedrock in the past, this one seems like it's going to get patched. Remember, this is still an in-development version of the game. Mojang is probably not going to let this one slide, and it just seems a little bit too easy to break bedrock that way anyway, considering bedrock is not meant to be broken at all. As for where you'll find these plants, don't worry too much if you can't find a Lush Cave right away. A wandering trader can occasionally come by and will sell you Dripleaf plants on the occasion that they have them. Now, this isn't looking much like a Lush Cave yet. We've got the greenery around here, but we need a lot more greenery covering the walls of the cave, and that is really where this next addition comes in. We're going to take a quick look at moss. Now, we're used to moss from mossy cobblestone and mossy stone brick, but moss now has a block all of its own, and if we place it next to grass, you'll notice the two have very different colors in this biome in particular, right? There is a lot more bright green to the moss, and you may be excited to hear that moss doesn't change color depending on what biome it is in, like grass or other foliage will. Moss will actually stay the same color right now, and to be honest, I would be happier with it staying that way, because I really want to start using this in environments where that green grass color just isn't as accessible, like deserts and savannas and stuff like that. Terraforming with moss is going to be really, really worth doing. And now, if you bone meal the moss, here is something a little bit maybe controversial. It will actually spread to nearby stone blocks and convert them to moss. And that's not just the regular natural stone that you see here. It will also spread to blocks like diorite and granite. So if I end up bone mealing some of the blocks of moss here, there we go. It's already spread to take over some of this diorite. And you'll notice it's grown a thick coating of grass, not to mention a few additional blocks here. We have moss carpet, which will grow and cover adjacent blocks even if they aren't mossy or able to be converted by moss. So when you spread this around on grass on the surface, you'll actually find moss carpet covers the grass, but it does not convert the grass blocks themselves. And this functions basically the same way as carpet does. You can even use it to hide light sources, like if I put some glowstone underneath here, for example, I can break this block here, place some glowstone, put the carpet over the top, and light can be let through, allowing you to use this to, I imagine, probably do a little bit more natural lighting in a plains biome or something like that. We can also take a look at the Azalea Shrubs that you can find here, and these are basically solid blocks made to look like little tree saplings. They do not grow into anything right now. If I bone meal one of these, as I right-click, nothing is happening, and there are variants of these that actually have flowers on top. If I look up Azalea in here, you can find Flowering Azalea here in the Decoration Blocks tab, and those, it is kind of implied, are going to have full trees that they will grow into later. I think Mojang is maybe thinking about whether they're going to include a wood type with it or if it's just going to use one of the existing wood types, but those look fantastic. And the reason we can pretty much tell that there are going to be trees of these is that they also have leaves. There are Azalea Leaves and Flowering Azalea Leaves. And let me tell you, I am so excited to finally have a leaf block that also includes flowers. I think it's going to be really, really nice to have. Not only that, but if you combine the regular Azalea Shrubs, these ones, with some moss blocks, you get some really cool effects. For example, if I place down an Azalea over here, let's place it on one of the clay blocks there, and then if I put moss on top of that, like so, you basically get what looks like a little topiary tree. And I really want to see people do more stuff with these, because I honestly think that's going to really add a lot to ornamental garden builds and stuff like that in Minecraft, where leaf blocks are just going to look a little bit too vacant, a little too transparent. These are basically solid blocks all the way around, that thick, dense foliage we've been looking for. So I'm going to spread the moss a little bit further around this cave, and you'll notice that it's only sticking to the current, like, Y level right now. It's not going up onto the blocks at the sides of caves, and it remains to be seen how that's going to affect any of the terrain generation once Lush Caves are fully implemented, but all I need to do is place a couple of these moss blocks on the next level up, and of course it'll start to spread a little bit further from there. So we can take this up the walls manually if we want to. It's not going to spread to other nearby blocks that have another block over the top of them though, so right now if I bone meal this block here, there we go, it'll spread there, but it won't spread to any of the blocks around it. So you have a little bit more control than it at first appears over where some of this stuff spreads, and it's not going to be like Podzol, which will just take over all of the grass in a certain area. But already our Lush Cave is really taking shape now. I think we could probably use a few more of these glowberry vines here and there. Those are just going to sit around and grow naturally. I'll make a few more kind of mossy regions of the cave walls around here, replace some of this coal as though I've just mined it out, and the moss has started to grow up the wall, and I really think this is going to add so much atmosphere to the newly generated caves. Not only that, but it's going to be so easy to spread this through a base. If you decided to make this your home and you wanted to spread the moss further and further into the cave system, just replace a couple of the nearby blocks with moss and just bone meal them a couple of times, and you end up with this fantastic grassy path that will lead you out here to the other exciting stuff beyond in this cave, like that geode that's exposed out there. And already this just looks phenomenally pretty, and I'm so happy that Lush Caves are getting added in the Caves and Cliffs update. To complete this picture, I'm going to add some mossy blocks to the ceiling here, have a few vines dangling down from here, and in the center I'm going to put one of the new Spore Blossoms, which are lovely pink plants. In fact, I might put a couple of these around. You'll notice that they drop these green particles. As you stand below them, you can see those falling, and they don't do anything yet other than give the place bags of atmosphere. They are currently just here to look pretty, and they're doing a really, really good job. I love the overlapping texture that they've done with the petals here. It really makes it look like a more 3D shape than we're used to from these otherwise fairly flat geometric Minecraft plants, and oh boy, are these going to be a really, really fun addition to add some atmosphere to places like this. Not only that, but if you block off all the way around these, they actually kind of look like a circular dish of sorts, and I don't know if there's really much use for that, but who knows. Right now, they can only be placed on the underside of blocks, though. They can only hang from the ceiling like this, so you're not going to find them attached to walls or the floor or anything like that. They only have to go on the underside of blocks right now. But just like that, our experimental Lush Cave is complete, and I can't wait to see what these look like in the full and updated world generation we're getting in 1.17, because whatever cave these generate in, I expect it's going to look lush and wonderful and absolutely glorious. We're also going to be able to find axolotls swimming around in Lush Cave lakes. I believe axolotls are supposed to be native to these Lush Caves, so hopefully they'll have a little bit more room to swim in than this, but if you want to find axolotls, that's where you're going to be looking when you're out there in the wild. If you happen to venture out to a desert, you'll also find some weird stuff happens with moss and cacti, and I'm not certain if this is going to be a permanent feature or if it's just an oversight when they were adding these blocks, but moss does not break cacti when placed next to it, which other blocks do, including the new rooted dirt block, which I didn't mention in that last little cave diorama because I'm still not sure where it fits in with the landscape of Lush Caves. But from what we understand, Lush Caves are going to be found by locating an azalea tree on the surface and then digging down through dirt where the roots have actually permeated through, and you'll find both rooted dirt blocks and hanging roots on the underside of these blocks as the cave starts to generate below. And I think rooted dirt is actually a really interesting... Oh, those still kind of hang in place. That's, once again, probably something that will end up getting fixed. They seem to need to be attached to blocks. I think rooted dirt actually has a really interesting place in the color palette as a bridge between granite and dirt. If you take a look at granite next to rooted dirt, they've kind of got that similar pink hue where the roots are permeating the soil there, and then you add dirt and coarse dirt on the end. You actually have a little bit of a gradient going on here, which I think is quite interesting, and I'd like to see that used a little bit more in future. I think that's going to blend the two nicely and have granite incorporate better into some more organic builds. So with all of these new blocks and a desert biome on my hands, I wanted to do something a little bit different with some of the blocks, and so I came up with the idea of making a kind of desert oasis. Now, I'd want to make the landscape probably a little bit more rolling and verdant than this, and maybe start the gradient a little bit further out, but I love the idea of taking moss into deserts and surrounding some of these like lakes that form naturally in deserts and rivers with lush and fertile land. And for once, we're able to do that because the grass color in deserts is more of this kind of horrible like yellow-brown sort of color, and it doesn't have as much of the lush green as you might expect it to have once it got a little bit closer to water and was able to hydrate a little bit more. Moss, on the other hand, not only has that really lush green color in every biome it's in, you'll notice, of course, that it hasn't really changed color from the cave we were in previously. It's actually got the moss texture on all sides, so you don't have to worry about the dirt texture showing around the outside of water, and unlike the other substitute you would want to use, green concrete powder, it doesn't convert into anything else when you place it near water. So I thought this was a really cool way of having this area feel like it became more of an oasis with like little palm trees and stuff around here, and of course we got a lot of moss carpet and azalea growing around here, but I've started replacing those here and there with melons, putting some boulders in, and even the grass that seems to have grown a little bit taller and withered slightly in the desert heat looks like it's thriving here in this oasis. A lot of this is still a work in progress. It's not like a finished piece of landscaping by any means, but I just thought it'd be a really interesting way of taking the moss blocks out of context and then starting to use them elsewhere in the world than Lush Caves. Naturally, the block goes really well with mossy cobblestone as well, so I've been using that to kind of blend the moss into some stone formations around the outside of this lake, and I think even the other plants, when you take them out of there, if you take a look at like the glowberry vines, for example, I think they look really nice out of the context of the Lush Cave and in a different biome. The Azalea Leaves and Flowering Azalea also do not change color in different biomes right now, and frankly, I would love for them to stay that way, because along with birch and spruce, they would be some of the only leaves that retain their color regardless of which biome they're in. And I expect that will probably stay the same because Lush Caves are going to be able to generate more or less anywhere in the world as far as we know. So I think it would be great to have a variety of leaves that we can use basically anywhere we like. Now, the Bedrock edition of Minecraft has recently seen a couple of changes to copper, and we got some of those in this snapshot, but not all of them. If I take out the copper blocks now, you'll notice that some of these have had their names changed a little bit. We have regular copper block, we now have exposed copper, weathered copper, and oxidized copper, instead of semi-weathered copper, weathered copper, and whatever the other one was. Lightly weathered, I think, was the first stage, and then semi-weathered, and then fully weathered. And I felt like those were kind of long names, and so I like the new naming convention a lot. I think that actually works out pretty well. One of the big changes that was made to copper is that it can now be crafted into its different variants by using the Stonecutter, which makes sense when you think that the variants are actually called cut copper. So we can make a few of those, and from there, of course, you can make slabs and so on and so forth. So nice and easy to play with copper if you're using the Stonecutter, and especially with the block being relatively rare to get hold of. You're going to have to harvest a fair amount of copper in order to get it. Cut copper stairs are going to be in high demand and are going to be quite expensive to make if you're putting 6 into a crafting table and only getting 4 back. So having a 1-to-1 trade for those is going to be a lot more preferable using the Stonecutter to get hold of those. It might be slightly easier to get hold of copper soon, though, because I believe the Drowned are going to be dropping copper ingots. That is in this snapshot. Don't really feel like testing it right now, but the Drowned are going to be able to drop copper ingots. So, in theory, if you set up a Drowned farm, maybe even using a zombie spawner, you'll be able to get hold of a lot of copper, which is obviously going to be one way of getting it, where mining is the other one. And in a caving update, you might want to go mining for it most of the time, but in multiplayer servers, where obviously supplies of copper in the area are going to run dry pretty quickly, you might want to have an alternate way of getting it, and I think Drowned farming is a fairly logical choice. It at least requires a little bit of effort, and is not going to be the most common drop in the world. Another big change that's coming to copper is that the oxidization process is now a random tick event, which is kind of similar to crop growth in that it just randomly decides when to update a stage. And I expect that event will be fairly rare for copper blocks because they still need to last in the world for a slightly longer time, but it can now be manipulated by players in their worlds by using the randomTickSpeed game rule. So if we do game rule randomTickSpeed 3000, increasing the tick speed to 1,000 times what it normally is in the average world, we'll start to see these copper blocks weathering. I have taken the regular copper blocks out, haven't I, instead of the weathered ones. Well, if we hang around for a little bit longer, we might start to see them change. Yep, looks like we did just see a couple of them oxidize. Yep, it's happening to a bunch of them now. Okay, great. So as far as I can tell, it is still sort of being tracked behind the scenes, and the copper blocks are staying that way for longer before that random tick takes effect. So you're not going to place down a copper block and then suddenly find that it updates into a couple of different stages. Like, it is going to take a long time, but maybe there's just a different type of cooldown to it. I'm not entirely certain how this mechanic works behind the scenes, but you'll notice, having changed very quickly, this whole block of copper is actually taking a little while to weather to the next stage, and there it goes. The exposed copper is starting to become weathered copper and will finally transition into oxidized copper. I'll set the game speed back to 3. There we go, random tick speed is back at 3, and of course the change process slows down. But you'll notice all of them basically changed before they started moving on to the next stage, so it is still based on the amount of ticks the copper has spent out there in the world. Now, one change that came to Bedrock Edition recently but has not been implemented in Java yet is being able to physically right-click on copper blocks with honeycomb to wax them. In Java Edition right now, we have to pick up a weathered copper block, get a crafting table or a crafting interface, which I can't really access, a personal crafting interface in Creative, and then you need to wax the weathered copper block in a crafting interface. Whereas in Bedrock Edition now, it seems to be the case that you can right-click on them with honeycomb and wax them in place, and the block in the world will just be replaced with the waxed version. You can also do that automatically using a dispenser, which I think would be a really great change for Java Edition, because that would allow for the automation of the waxing stage, so that once you detected a change using an observer, you'd be able to have this dispenser automatically fire and the copper block would be preserved, which would be great for copper farms in the world, and I expect a lot of players would be happy with that, because most of the time when builders are using blocks like this, they want to know what color the block is before they put it into their build, and people don't necessarily like blocks of their builds changing while they're away. So I imagine copper is going to be a kind of interesting material to work with. If they don't add that honeycomb waxing stage, we're going to have large areas of copper basically aging before you can take it all up and wax it once to make sure it stays the same way it is. But if we have an automated way of dealing with that process through dispensers, I really think that's going to improve a lot of people's opinion of copper. There are a few other changes to existing features that we've seen in previous snapshots, such as this one, which allows shulkers to actually trigger sculk sensors by opening or closing, outputting a different redstone signal for each one. So if you open a shulker box, it'll output a signal strength of 15. Once the shulker box closes again, it'll output a signal strength of 14. There is actually a full table of some of the changes on the Minecraft.net blog post about this snapshot, which includes mobs interacting with things, players equipping gear, shearing things, ravagers roaring. There's a whole bunch of different ones, which means so many different additional player interactions with stuff are going to be detectable by sculk sensors, and I can't wait to see what kind of minigames arise out of mechanics like this. We're also seeing a few changes to powdered snow, a couple of refinements to it in this update, namely that if an arrow travels into and enters a powdered snow block, it's actually going to be extinguished if it was on fire. If you travel through a powdered snow block, sometimes it works that way too, although I think if you fire it at full power, it's still going to have the flames on it as it comes out the other side. We also see a couple of changes with mob interaction. Skeletons, for example, when they sink into powdered snow, will eventually come out as strays. This is kind of similar to how zombies will convert into drowned if they're left in a river for too long, and also husks will end up converting into regular zombies if they end up in a river. You'll also see that foxes can now traverse powdered snow easily. They are light enough on their feet that they are able to walk on the surface of powdered snow, and will therefore it will have no effect. I did spawn that one fox in the snow block though, so I think it probably needs to be let out here. But as you can see, as the skeleton has spent a little bit longer in there, it is now a stray, and you want to watch out for that guy because he's going to have slowness arrows at this point. But out of all of that, I really think these moss blocks and all of the features that have been added to Lush Caves are some of my favorite stuff that's been added for the upcoming Caves and Cliffs update. Let me know in the comments what your favorite feature of this snapshot was and what else you're excited for as we get closer and closer to the release of Minecraft 1.17. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.